Hi, and welcome to Streamlining Your JavaScript with JQuery. My name is Scott Bartow, and this class is being offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. And JQuery is a library that's used by JavaScript, and basically what it includes is a whole bunch of packages of code that allow you to write in your JavaScript program calls to JQuery, the JQuery library, and these methods that have already been created for you to allow you to do all kinds of different things to your JavaScript code. So why don't we take a step back, and first we'll just talk about the fundamentals of a web page. So to use JQuery, you do need a foundational understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All three of those languages are used in what creates used to create a web page, an interactive web page. So the analogy I like to use is of a house. So a house is a house has every web page starts with HTML, and HTML in relationship to a house is your foundation, the walls, the roof, the frame. Basically, a shell of a web page is created by HTML. Now, if you want your house to have some decorations, paint, then that is what CSS is to a house. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and basically gives your web page style. It makes it look nice. And then finally, you have JavaScript, which in relation to a house, the house analogy, JavaScript is your heating, your plumbing, your air conditioning, your refrigeration, all the things that make your house functional. That is what JavaScript is to a web page. It makes the web page interactive and functional and dynamic. So why don't we start with, I've brought up the text editor that we're going to be using in this class is Notepad++. If you don't have Notepad++ loaded onto your computer, you can easily download it. Otherwise, if you have a Windows machine, which is what I'm using, then it comes standard with Notepad, the basic version of Notepad that you can use also. So first thing I want us to do is, why don't we create a basic HTML page? So the first tag that we're going to be adding is less than exclamation point capital DOCTYPE space, and then the doc type is HTML, and then close out the tag with a greater than sign. Now you should all be a little bit familiar with this basic HTML template that we're going to create right now. All right, the next tag is going to be HTML, if I could spell. All right, hit enter. And then several lines down, we'll do a closing HTML tag, HTML. Close it up. All right, then up here, there's two parts to every HTML page. There's the head. So we'll do head, 2 lines down, then we'll do the closing head tag. And then we have the body. Closing body tag. All right. All right, so that's the basic template. Now, so the head section in your HTML page, that is where you're going to have information about the web page. All right, you can have a title, you can put CSS code up there, you can do a script, which we're going to be using for JavaScript and for JQuery. And in the body section of your HTML page, that is what gets displayed on the web page. All right, so your heading tags, your paragraphs, your lists, all that information, as you'll see as we start coding this. So let's start by throwing some a couple of tags inside our body. All right, so we'll do a heading h2 tag, and we'll say welcome to JQuery, and then we'll do a closing h2 tag. Hit enter a couple times, and then we'll add a paragraph tag, which is a p tag. This is paragraph 1, and then we'll do a closing p tag, and then we'll do another p tag. P. This is paragraph 2. All right, and then we'll do a closing p tag. And for now, that's all we're going to add for the body. All right, so up in the head section, this is where we're going to add our script tag to basically include JQuery. So we'll have a script tag, opening script tag, and so let's talk about the two ways you can call the JQuery file to be included inside your program. Okay, the first way is you can do a script tag. I'll do it here. And inside I'll do an opening and closing script tag. Closing script tag has the / script. All right, so to call the JQuery file, basically you have to put an attribute into the opening tag, the opening script tag, and the attributes are going to be source src equals double quotes, and let's call JQuery dash 3.5.1 .min.js double quotes, and that'll be it. Now I'll move the closing script tag up on the same line. All right, so that's one way to call your JQuery file. And the other way is if you don't want to download and host the JQuery yourself, you can include it from a CDN, a content delivery network. Now, Google is an example of someone who hosts JQuery. So, so another way to do this is we'll do a script tag, and we'll do our source inside the opening script tag and double quotes, and we'll do HTTPS // and we'll do ajax.googleapis.com, googleapis.com/ajax.libs. Oops, messed that up. All right, Ajax /libs/JQuery, and then we'll have JQuery. Sorry, /libs/JQuery/ and then we'll do 3.5.1 / and then jQuery.min.js, and that's it. All right, double quotes, and then we'll close out the opening script tag, and then we'll have a closing script tag. Yeah. All right. All right, and that's all inside the head section. It looks like I wiped out my head tag. All right, so I'll do my opening head tag again. All right. Okay. All right, so those are the two ways you can call the jQuery file. And so I'm going to use the first method. All right, so this is our basically our template of an HTML page called jQuery. All right, so I'm going to save this now. So up here, you can do a save. Click on the third icon from the left, and you'll say Save As. And you got to make sure that the Save As type down here doesn't say normal text file. What we want is all types. All right. And now what we're going to be doing is we can call this jQuery.html. All right, it's got to be an HTML extension. All right, we'll save it. All right, so now it's saved as jQuery.html. And you might want on your own machine, you might want to do a brand new folder that's called something like either call it jQuery or Streamlining JavaScript with jQuery, something like that, that will allow you to understand, allow you to realize that the files inside that folder are from this class. All right, so with Notepad++, up here on the toolbar, off to the right, we have Run. So if I click Run, and then I do another Run, it'll ask me the program to run, so I have to go find my file. So I'll browse over here, the three dots. All right, and where did I put that? Down here in the bottom right, it'll say executable file, but what we want is we want that to be all files. Click on all files, and then my file comes up. And see down here, down below, I have jQuery, which is my jQuery.html file. So if I click on that, it'll run. Click on it, it loads it up into this pop-up window, and then I click Run. And that's what comes up. So you can see that this is my web page. I chose to have it go into Chrome, the Chrome web browser. I recommend that you use Chrome for this class, not Firefox or IE. So you can see my basic web page. I've got welcome to jQuery. That's my heading 2. And then my paragraphs are, this is paragraph 1, this is paragraph 2. All right. Okay, so let's get back to, let's see if we can shrink that down. So I'm going to go back to Notepad. All right. Let's see if I can shrink this. So I'll have my browser on the right-hand side. All right. And I'll have Notepad on the left-hand side. I'll move that over. All right. So, okay. Now we have to add some jQuery. All right. So this is what jQuery is all about, really. So the basic syntax is, I'll write it down here in our file. Well, I'll put it down here below. All right. So the basic syntax is $, and then I'll have you know what? Let me see if I can make my file a little bit bigger. So that's, this might come out as a little bit small. Length. Let me see if I can do it. Settings. How about settings? Maybe preferences. Let's see. Can we make it bigger? Let's get there. Tools. Hold on. I'm sorry if the text is a little bit small. Hopefully you can see it. But down here in our Notepad++ program, so the basic syntax of JavaScript is $, open parenthesis, and then a selector, close parenthesis, period, and then some action, some method that you're calling, some Java or jQuery method. All right. So it's $. The selector is what element, what HTML element you're selecting. Dot, and then whatever action. The action is the different kinds of methods that we're going to be learning about in this class. There are jQuery methods. Methods are basically functions. They're packages of code that when we call the function or method, it executes the code inside of it. And so since these packages of code are all in the jQuery library, it makes our job when we're writing JavaScript a whole lot easier to add all kinds of functionality to our web page without having to write endless lines of code. So that's what jQuery does for you. So by including the library up here, by calling this Google API to bring in the jQuery library, we are then allowed to use all the different methods that are part of the jQuery library. All right, so one thing you want to know is all the JQuery that we're going to be writing is always going to be inside something called a document. Yeah, why don't I set it up here? So up in the head section, all right. This is where we're going to put our JQuery. All right, so we'll do a script tag, closing script tag, and then I'll do a closing script tag. All right. Next, inside this script tag, here's going to be our first JQuery code. All right, so $, open parenthesis, and then we're going to do document, parenthesis, dot ready, parenthesis, and then function, parenthesis, and function, open and closing parenthesis, and then space, open curly bracket, hit enter a couple times, and then you'll have a closing curly bracket lined up under the $. So what this is doing is, now we're going to put all our JQuery code inside of here, but what this is doing is it doesn't want to execute the JQuery code until the document is ready. All right, so what we're doing, our selector up here is the document, which is the whole web page. And that is holding the method ready. So it's making sure the document, what was selected, is ready before we actually execute anything inside of it. All right, because you don't want your JQuery to be running before the page has fully loaded. And that's what this does. So you always want to have document.ready, function, parenthesis, and then open curly bracket, closing curly bracket. All right. All right. So now let's see what we can do. All right. So in working with selectors, let's give this a try. Okay. So first, down here in the body, I'm going to add a little more HTML. I'm going to add a button. All right, so we got a button tag, and I'm going to say click me to hide paragraph. Paragraphs. We have two of them, so we're going to hide them both. All right, closing. Then we have to do the closing button tag. All right. Now up here, inside of document.ready, we're going to add $. So this is our JQuery, parenthesis, and then our selector is going to be when we're going to be selecting the button tag. All right. So these tags are HTML tags are elements. All right. So the elements I have are, I have body, I have H2, I have P, I have button. Those are the elements I have inside of my HTML page. All right, so I'm selecting button, and I'm saying dot. There you go. Dot click. Parenthesis function. Parenthesis. Actually, open closing parenthesis. Space. And then opening curly bracket, and enter a couple times, lined up underneath this $, I have a closing curly bracket. And then inside of that, so when the button is selected, when you click on the button, that's what that code says, then I want you to do this JQuery. I want to do $, parenthesis, and then double quotes, P, double quote, all right, I want to select the P tags, dot hide, parenthesis, semicolon. Oops. All right. And that's all we need. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this extra space. Right. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to save my file. I'm going to go over here to the toolbar. I'm going to click on run, and run. And I want to run the JQuery. All right, so I'll run it. All right, so welcome to JQuery, right? Now, if I click the button, click me to hide the paragraphs, then this paragraph and this paragraph should hide. Please move this window away from the shared application. All right, having a little trouble here. All right, so boom. I click it. All right, so it looks like I have a little problem. I've got closing script, document.ready function. Oh yeah, I have to close. First, I have to have the closing curly bracket, but then I need a closing parenthesis and then a semicolon. So I forgot those items. And the same is true. That's for document.ready. Same is going to be true for the button selector. So I need a closing parenthesis and I need a semicolon and semicolon. Okay, so I'll save it again. I'll run it. Run it this time. And, it works this time. All right, so I clicked the button, clicked me to hide the paragraphs, and it hid the two paragraphs. Notice it didn't hide the H2 tag. All right, so let's see if I can move this down. All right, now if I just refresh my browser page, it brings the paragraphs back up, and I can click the button again and make it disappear. Refresh, all right? Now, if I had said, so what it did was it selected all the P tags in my HTML page. So if I changed it, instead of the P tag, if I had selected the H2 tag, now if I save that and run it, oops, I didn't have to do that, sorry. Click me to hide. Now it gets rid of my H2 tag, but it leaves the paragraphs, all right? So it all depends on what you select over here in your JQuery. All right, so just keep in mind, you have to reference the, you have to call in the library, right, with a script tag in the head section of your HTML up here. And you can either call the Google API or you can call, you can bring in the file directly. But either way, you want to bring in the JQuery library. And once you've done that, then you simply want to do a couple more open and closing script tags in the head section. And this is where you can add your JQuery. Your JQuery should always start with document.ready function, right? So making sure that the page has loaded fully before you start executing your JQuery methods. And then what we did was we had the JQuery to select the button when the button is clicked. So we're using the JQuery click method. And when that happens, then we want to select the H2 tags, and we want to hide them. So we're calling the hide method, the jQuery hide method. All right, so that's a little sample of what jQuery is about. All right, so now what I'd like to show you is, so that was how you select an element, okay? There's a couple other ways to select, all right? So here if you look at the jQuery that we've written, we're selecting button and we're also selecting H2, all right? And but what if we want to select something else? What if we want to select an ID, all right? So I'm going to give this paragraph an ID, okay? So it's inside the opening p tag of this paragraph. I'm going to do ID equals double quotes, and I'll say ID equals double quotes. I'll say para 1 double quotes. All right, so I gave that specific paragraph an ID. All right. So now up here, instead of hiding the H2 tag, I'm going to hide the first paragraph based on its ID of para 1. And the way to do that is, for IDs, you want to do, for the selector, you want to do £. I'll get rid of this. And then the ID, so para 1. So I'm selecting para 1, the ID para 1. So now, when I click the button, only the first paragraph should disappear. All right, so this is how we select based on an ID. I'll save it, I'll run it. I say I don't have to run it. Once I run it the first time, all I have to do is go to my web browser and refresh. All right, so now I've got my H2 tag, H2, I've got my paragraph 1, paragraph 2. When I click this button, paragraph 1 should disappear. And it does. All right, refresh. All right, so now I want to show you how to, other side, how to make a class disappear. So we're doing why don't I do this? I'll just copy this code and so the first one will just be H2. So it'll just be selecting an element to hide. The second one is selecting an ID to hide. And the third one is going to be a class. So this second paragraph down here in the body, I'm going to do class equals double quotes para. I'll just say para. Because classes can be used, an ID can only be used in one element, but a class should be used in multiple elements. So I could give a class to the first paragraph, the second paragraph, and H2. They could all be the class para if we wanted to. But I'll just make the second paragraph be class 2. So double quotes. And for class, for ID, it starts with a £, and then the ID name. For class, it starts with a period, and then the class name. So para is our class name, double quotes, parenthesis, dot hide, parenthesis, and semicolon. All right. And I'll save it over here. I'll refresh it. All right, so I've got my H2, paragraph 1, paragraph 2. If I click this, all three of these should go away because I'm selecting the H2 element, I'm selecting the paragraph 1 ID, and I'm selecting the paragraph 2 class. And they all go away. Only thing left is the button. And we could hide the button too, if we wanted to. All right. So those are the three main ways of selecting, all right, in Java, in jQuery. All right, next up, events. Okay, what are events? All right. So different user actions on a web page are what events are. Okay, it represents the precise moment when something happens. A keystroke, a mouse click, what else? Well, we'll go over some of them. All right. So actually, we're doing it right up here. All right. So we're doing a click on the button, right? So click is an event. So let's just go over some of them. All right. So we already did click right here, but what if we do double click? So double click is DB click, double click. All right. So now we have when the button is double clicked, not just clicked. All right. So I'll save it. And over here, I'll just refresh my browser session. All right. Everything's up here. So if I just click once, nothing happens. When I click once on the button, nothing happens. But we're using the double click method, jQuery method. If I double click, it should work, but it's not. So button double click. Oh, it's not DB click, it's DBL click. All right, so I'll save that. Over here in my browser session, I refresh it, and I just click the button, nothing happens, double click, and everything disappeared. All right, so that's double click. So there's click, double click. Now how about mouse enter? All right, so I'll change double click to mouse enter. And this function is executed when the mouse pointer enters the HTML element. All right. So mouse enter. And I'll get rid of DBL click. And what I'll do here is something we use in JavaScript, right, for debugging a lot of times, is we use the command alert. Open parenthesis, and we'll say you entered what? The first paragraph. How about that? Double quotes, closing parenthesis, semicolon. So what we're going to do is instead of that being inside the button, I'm going to pop this out of here. All right, so I'll put it out of the code. Oops. I'll have to do it again. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do $, open parenthesis, and we're going to do, let's do the ID, all right? We'll call the ID $, first of all. Open parenthesis, let's call the ID, so we got £, and The ID is for the first paragraph is what? Para1. See down below here. ID para1. All right. And actually, it's got to be surrounded by double quotes. Double quote and double quote, closing parenthesis, dot. And here we'll do the mouse, enter, mouse, enter, parenthesis, function, parenthesis, space, open curly bracket, hit enter a couple times, closing curly bracket under the $sign. Then indented, we'll do the alert again. Alert. You entered first paragraph element. Close that and semicolon. Okay. Up here, I'll change this back to, I'll just do click instead of mouse enter. All right, so that's on the button up here. All right, so once my mouse goes over the first paragraph, it'll bring up this pop-up window, this alert, and that says you entered the first paragraph element. All right, so I'll save it. Over here, I'll refresh it. And if I go over the second paragraph, nothing happens. If we go over the first one, nothing happens. Para 1, right? Double quotes. It's an ID. Dot mouse. Enter. Function. That. Oh, that's what I didn't do. So the closing curly bracket here has to be followed by a closing parenthesis and a semicolon. All right. I'll save it, refresh it. And right away, the page says you entered the first paragraph element. This is my alert pop-up window. Click OK. All right, so let's see. If I go over this second paragraph, or go over the button, or go up, I cross the element line. If I go here to the H2, nothing happens. Boom. Once I mouse over the first paragraph, I get this alert window, and it says you entered the first paragraph element. Okay, so that's what mouse enter, the mouse enter event is all about. Let's see. All right, so I want to show you the focus function, which is very, very useful. All right, so focus. So I'm just going to have to add a little bit of code down below. So what I'll do is so I'm going to add have the input elements. All right. So I do name, double quotes, space, and then I'll do an input tag. And the type is going to equal test, space, and I'll give it a name. Oops. It's going to equal full name, quotes, closing, greater than sign. And then I'll do a BR tag, which is a break, right? And that'll ship it down to the next line. And here I've got email, double quotes, same thing. I'm going to do an input tag, type equals text, name, equals email. Oops. Have to double quote it. Email. Greater than sign. Then I'll do a, nope, I don't need a BRT. So this full name has to be double quotes. All right. Okay, so now my body and my web page will show name, and then it'll have a text box and email, and then have a text box. All right. So to use focus, what we're going to do is we're going to up here. We're going to replace this show. Well, why don't I just push it down? All right. So my selector is my input tag. So $, open parenthesis, double quotes, input, double quote, close parenthesis, and we're going to say dot focus. Dot focus. And then we'll do a parenthesis. Oops. Having trouble here. Parenthesis. Function. Open, closing parentheses, space, curly bracket. Down below, we're going to do closing curly bracket, closing parenthesis, and semicolon. All right, so we got our selector for input. And we'll say $, parenthesis, this, closing parenthesis, closing parenthesis. All right, and this is just saying whatever element we're on, all right? We're going to do this too. So if we're on a certain input element, then we're going to give focus to it, and we're going to give it some style. All right, so this dot CSS, parenthesis, double quote, background, color, background dash color, double quotes, and then closing parenthesis, or sorry, comma, and then double quotes, green, double quote, closing paren, and semicolon. All right, so $, parenthesis this dot CSS, parenthesis double quote, backgrounds spelled wrong. That's why it's not coming up. Background dash color, double quotes, comma, space, double quote, green, double quote, parenthesis, semicolon. All right. All right. So let's save it. See what happens. All right. So when I have focus, when I click on a certain element, then it's going to give it a background color of green. So you'll say, all right. And we're only selecting inputs. And down here in our body, we have 2 input tags. We have input for name, input for email. All right. So I saved it, and over here on the right, we got to get rid of that. All right. So I have to get rid of mouse enter. It's driving me nuts. I'll remove that. Save it. Okay, I'm back to my web browser. I refresh. Oops. Refresh the web browser. Now, if I click on one of the inputs, it should turn it green. All right, let me save it. What am I doing wrong? I got name, input. All right, that's all I need. Name, text, input. All right, so up here, dollar, input, dot, focus. Function, parentheses, curly bracket, and then all that. Actually, the focus should be yellow. That seems like for some reason this is faded. Background dash color. Double click this. So if I do a save, come over here. Oh, you know what? I didn't refresh. Refresh. Yeah, there we go. All right, maybe I didn't refresh. All right, so the code's working pretty good. So I clicked on the test box for name and it turns the background yellow. Click on the test box for email, it turns the background yellow. So now let's do another event. I'm just going to copy this JQuery code and I'll pop it down below. Put it right underneath it. Okay. And instead of focus, we're going to do blur, which means it'll do something when you leave that element. So focus is it'll do something when you're on that element. And blur is it'll do something else when you leave the element. So what it's going to do is we're going to have it, when we leave it, we're going to have it change into the color green for the background color. All right, so I'll save it. Over here, I'm going to refresh. And if I click on name, it turns it yellow. So it's got focus there. If I click on email, it should turn name green and email yellow. And it does. All right. And then when I click off of both of them, it makes the background green. All right. So that's focus, the focus event and the blur event. What else do we have? And then one more method is on click or on, the on method, and then inside the parentheses can be click or something else. So we're going to attach the click event to the on method. That's just one more event. All right, so let's see how we can do that. All right. So I'll get rid of this code. And so we got a button. And down here, I'll get rid of these guys. And we got a paragraphs. All right, so let me do one more paragraph. This is paragraph 3. All right. And then up here, what we're going to have is we're going to have our selections are going to be the p tags. All right. So that we have 3 tags, 3 p tags in our body section right now. All right. So the p tag, and we'll do p, and we'll do on. So on, parenthesis, and then inside the parentheses, we're going to have click. All right. So it'll be double quote, click, and then we'll do a comma to concatenate, and then I get rid of this open parentheses. So comma, function, and then the rest. Function, parenthesis, curly bracket. All right. So we're selecting the p tags, and then on click. What are we going to do? We are going to hide them. We're going to hide all the p tags. Whenever, well, we're going to hide each p tag as they're clicked. So we have 3 of them. All right. All right, there we go. And I'll put this up here. I'll get rid of this white space. All right, so now I can save it. So what we're doing is we're writing JQuery to select the p tag. When it's clicked, on click, we're going to hide it. All right. Get that, and I'll refresh it. All right, so I'm going to click on the first p tag. Oh, it made them all disappear. Unclick this hide. Instead of saying, oh, it hid all the p tags. Right here, I selected all the p tags. Any p tag you can find in our HTML page, and hide them. So what I'd rather do is, this doesn't require quotes, is what is happening here? Delete. I'm just going to do this. So whatever element I'm on, whatever element I click on, I want to hide that element. All right, so you can use this for whatever element you're on. All right, and so I'll save it, refresh it. All right, now if I click on the first paragraph, it disappears. If I click on the second paragraph, it disappears. If I click on the third paragraph, it disappears. All right. So that's how you use on. And quite often I've used on with on click to be able to get things to disappear. Now I want to show you one more thing. One more. One more event. Let's say I just want to show you, because you have hide. We've been using hide a lot, but I wanted to show you the show. All right, so all right, so what we're going to select is what we'll do is we'll select the ID para1. Right, and we'll click it. All right, so when we have click a para1, actually we'll do two separate buttons. Sorry. All right, so we'll call this the hide button. All right, so we give it an ID equals pound hide equals double quotes hide. All right, and that's what we're going to call the button. So we'll change this from click me to hide the paragraphs to just hide. All right, now copy this. And this will be our show button. And I'll change the text inside the button to show. All right, so now we have our two buttons. And up here in our under our document.ready JQuery, we're going to have, so if you have pound hide, so I'm calling the hide ID, which is the hide button. When you have that, I want to hide all our paragraphs. All right, so I will double quotes, P, double quotes. I'll hide it. All right, and then I'll copy this code, and down here, paste it. Here we're going to pound show. And we're going to call the show function. All right, so what we did was down here in our body section, created two buttons, one with an ID of hide and a title of hide, or a label of hide, and the other button with the ID of show with a label of show. And then up here in our jQuery, we're selecting the hide ID that represents the first button. And when you click on that button, it's going to hide all the p tags, all the paragraphs in our HTML page. And then we're also calling the show ID for the show button. And when you click on that show button, we're going to show all the paragraphs. All right, so show and hide. I'll save it over here. I'll refresh it. And now you can see in our HTML page in the web browser that we have the hide and show buttons. So if I click on the hide button, it should hide all three of these paragraphs, and it does. If I click on the show button, it should show all three paragraphs, and it does. So show, hide, show, hide. I use this all the time in my my jQuery programs for different kinds of applications. All right, so we're out of time. I hope you've enjoyed the class and learned something about the huge benefits of calling the jQuery library and using all the methods inside the library to make your code even more functional and easier to code in JavaScript. So once again, my name is Scott Bartow. This class has been generously offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks a lot.